Name: Joseph D. Pistone, aka Donnie Brasco. The first FBI agent to have infiltrated the American Mafia so deeply. For nearly 6 years, from 1976 to 1981, his job was to gather as much information as possible to bring down organized crime. During this mission, Agent Pistone risked his life every single day. There were mornings when he woke up, went to the bathroom, looked at himself in the mirror, and thought, "Is today the day that I'm gonna get whacked?" Taking on the Cosa Nostra was a monumental challenge back then. Many believed it was an organization law enforcement couldn't touch. In the 1970s, New York's 5 families were still firmly established, and dismantling them was a real challenge for the FBI. That's where Agent Pistone came in, first infiltrating the Colombos, and then, to an even greater extent, the Bonannos. Throughout this dangerous operation, the agent, whose codename was Donnie Brasco, sacrificed his family life to join another. A family that wouldn't have hesitated to take him out if they wanted to. This is the story of Joseph Pistone as he lived it. The story of an FBI agent on a secret mission to infiltrate the Mafia. It was so secret that most FBI agents didn't know his true identity. So secret that they thought he was one of them. As only a handful of people were aware of the Donnie Brasco operation. Before we dive in, huge thanks to today's sponsor, War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. It's free to play on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and now on mobile, and it puts you in control of over 2,500 historically accurate tanks, planes, helicopters, and warships from 10 major nations, from the 1920s all the way to modern-day fighters and main battle tanks. The graphics are super realistic, the sounds are extremely authentic, and every vehicle is modeled down to its individual components. You're not just losing hit points, you'll see the exact shell penetration, the damage to your engine, your crew, your fuel tanks, and the X-ray kill cam shows you everything in detail. There's a game mode for every style, arcade, realistic, or simulator, and it's all running on War Thunder's own Dagor engine, so even lower-end PCs get smooth, stunning visuals. And yes, you can now take the battle with you, thanks to the new mobile version on iOS and Android. Now here's the good part. If you're new to War Thunder or haven't played in the last 6 months, click my links in the description or pinned comment to get a massive bonus pack on PC and consoles. You'll get multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. But it's only available for a limited time, so don't wait. Join over 70 million players and experience the most immersive military PvP battles out there. Click the links below, and I'll see you on the battlefield. Chapter 1. The Right Man for the Job. I've got Sicilian and Calabrian blood running through my veins. My grandparents came from Italy, but I was born in Pennsylvania on September 17, 1939. I spent part of my childhood there, and then, with my parents, my little brother, and my little sister, we moved to New Jersey. I remember playing a lot of basketball in high school. I was only about 6 feet tall, but I had a good vertical, good enough to make the B team of the New Jersey State selection. I knew I wasn't talented enough to go pro. For me, basketball was more of a way to get into college. In college, I studied social sciences, and after 2 years, I got married. I was 20, and my wife was a nurse. No one in my family had ever been in law enforcement, but ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a cop or an FBI agent. In my senior year, I remember a friend who decided to take the police entrance exam. He wanted me to take it with him, but I still had a year of college left, so I wasn't interested. He kept pushing me though, and eventually I gave in. Turns out, I passed both the written and physical tests with flying colors. I asked the local police chief if I could work part-time. At first, he said yes, but then right before the swearing in, he changed his mind. So I turned down the offer and didn't join the force at that time. Later, I graduated and started teaching social sciences at a middle school. By then, I already had 2 young daughters. That's when a friend of mine, who worked for Naval Intelligence, the Navy's primary intelligence service, asked if I'd be interested in a position there. He explained that they often hired civilians to investigate crimes involving Navy and Marine Corps personnel on base. Since the job involved working closely with the FBI, I was immediately interested. Especially since becoming a federal agent had always been my dream. I took the tests and passed them easily, officially becoming a naval intelligence agent. By then, my wife had given birth to our 3rd daughter. I stayed there for 3 years, mostly handling cases involving drugs, theft, and espionage. Eventually, my work met the FBI's standards, and I was allowed to take their entrance exam. Once again, I passed, and on July 7, 1969, I was sworn in as a special agent of the FBI. I had just fulfilled my childhood dream. When I joined the FBI, I already knew I wanted to be out on the streets. That's how everyone started anyway. My first assignment was at the Jacksonville office in Florida. There, I worked cases involving fugitives, illegal gambling, and bank robberies. I had a natural ability to connect with people on the street, which wasn't all that surprising. I'd grown up in that environment. After spending 18 months in Jacksonville, I was transferred to Alexandria, Virginia. Pretty nice place to live. I stayed there for 4 years, and in 1974, I was sent to New York and assigned to the truck and hijack squad. I remember we were seizing 6 or 7 shipments of stolen goods every single day. It was around that time that I was offered my first undercover assignment. When I was in New York, the FBI had begun investigating a crew that specialized in stealing heavy equipment and luxury cars. To take them down, they needed someone to go undercover. The job requirement was pretty simple. You had to know how to operate heavy machinery, like semis and bulldozers. Since I was one of the few agents with that kind of experience, I was the obvious choice. That was my first undercover mission. To pull it off, I had to come up with a cover name. I settled on Donnie Brasco. Donnie for short. I think I got it from some old movie or book. I can't remember exactly. The operation went off without a hitch. In fact, it was a huge success. We arrested 30 people and recovered over $1 million worth of stolen vehicles. I got a $250 bonus for that, and a glowing letter of commendation signed by Clarence Kelly himself, the FBI director at the time. That was the turning point in my career. People started to recognize my skill as an undercover agent, and it seemed pretty clear. I was built for this kind of work. And my infiltration into the Mafia wasn't far off. Back in the day, J. Edgar Hoover didn't want his agents involved in undercover work. He thought it was a dirty job, something that could tarnish the image of his men. But times had changed, and by then, undercover operations had become essential, especially when it came to dismantling criminal networks. The success we had with the heavy equipment theft case convinced a lot of people that our approach worked. They realized that a deep cover agent was far more effective than just using informants. Of course, not everyone's cut out to be an undercover agent. There's a certain checklist you need to meet. By that, I mean you have to have a strong personality, be disciplined and in control of yourself, be able to handle pressure in difficult situations, be resourceful and independent, because loneliness will be a part of your daily life, and have an especially tough ego. Going undercover means you never forget who you are. You've got to constantly remind yourself that it's a special operation, and that you're still an FBI agent. Spending your days surrounded by criminals can make you lose sight of why you're there in the first place. In the spring of 1976, our truck and hijack squad came up with the idea of infiltrating the major fences, the ones who were connected to the Mafia. Some of them ran restaurants or bars that were actually owned by the mob. We realized we had a chance to make a major bust. For reference, connected means that you associate with Mafia members. You work for them, but don't get all the benefits of a full-fledged member. A made guy or wise guy, on the other hand, is officially inducted into the Mafia. To infiltrate those networks, they picked me as the ideal candidate. First, because I had already pulled off a similar undercover operation successfully. And second, because I knew the world of theft and the streets inside and out. Oh, and there was one more reason. I was Italian. For the very first time, the FBI was about to infiltrate the Mafia using one of its own agents. To do that, we prepared as thoroughly as possible. As for me, I decided to stick with my previous alias, Donnie Brasco. First, because it was easier to continue using a name I was already comfortable with. Second, because I'd built a small reputation under that name during my last mission. And finally, because I'd already made a few contacts as Donnie Brasco. Naturally, Brasco needed a backstory, and I had that part covered. I'd say I spent some time living in the Miami area in California, that I was single and an orphan. Yeah, when you have no family, it's a lot harder for people to dig into your background. And finally, that I specialized in jewelry theft and burglary. I needed a skill set that let me operate solo and non-violently, so I could come and go freely and invent heists nobody else knew about. I already had some knowledge of alarm systems and surveillance equipment, but I needed to learn more about jewelry. So I went to a jeweler in New York and trained for 2 weeks, just enough to be able to talk the talk. Once all the paperwork was completed, we sent it to headquarters in Washington, and the mission was approved. All that was left was for me to disappear. Only a handful of people knew about the operation. Aside from the liaison officers and a few people at headquarters, nobody else had a clue. Even my own family had no idea what was going on. All they knew was that I was going underground for a while. Since this was the FBI's first long-term undercover mission of its kind, we didn't take any chances. Every trace of my employment with the FBI was erased. My desk was completely cleaned out, my name removed from the personal roster, and my personal file locked away in a secret vault. That way, if anyone came asking about me, they'd be told that no one named Joseph Pistone had ever worked for the FBI. We began planning the mission in April of 1976, and by September, I felt ready. I was about to walk out of the FBI office, knowing I wouldn't be back for a long, long time. Soon, both friends and coworkers would have no idea where I'd gone. It was the beginning of a new life, a life I would live completely in the shadows. Chapter 2: Entering the Mafia, the Colombos. For this undercover mission, I decided not to use any informants. I wanted to handle everything myself, ensuring that no one would make the connection between me and the FBI. I also wanted to do certain things on my own, like finding an apartment, getting a car, and opening a bank account under my new name. The goal was to take no risks. I was going to rub shoulders with Mafia guys through fences, so it was important that I did everything on my own. Once that was done, all I had left to do was dive into the street world. I had a list of places where Mafia-connected fences hung out, mostly restaurants, bars, and nightclubs in downtown and lower Manhattan. At first, my objective was to just show up. I wanted people to get used to seeing me around. I moved from one place to another for drinks or dinner, and I simply observed. I wanted to take it slow, so as not to raise any suspicions. Ultimately, I was trying to build the reputation of a guy who kept to himself and didn't ask too many questions. I spent the first 2 months watching, listening and recording everything I could in the bars and restaurants I frequented. One of them was a place called Carmelo's, a restaurant owned by 2 members of the Genovese family. I knew that some made men came there from time to time. At Carmelo's, the guys mostly played a dice game called backgammon. There were made men in the mix, and they'd bet big, like $1,000 a game. I figured this could be a good way to break the ice and start making connections with the regulars. The problem was, I knew absolutely nothing about the game. Luckily, I had help from Chuck, a fellow FBI agent who was infiltrating the music world in New York at the time. Chuck was his code name during the investigation, and thanks to him, I learned how to play backgammon. We played several games together until I felt ready to try my hand at it myself. So I went back to Carmelo's and started breaking the ice with the regulars by playing a few rounds. I did this for 2 or 3 weeks, and slowly but surely, I started making some acquaintances. The guys began to trust me more and more. They greeted me every time I entered the bar and even started calling me Don. Then I hit it off with Marty, the bartender. He wasn't in the Mafia, but he was a sharp guy, streetwise, and knew everything that was going on in the bar. Sometimes I'd go out with him and party, and little by little, I started to become a regular of the house. Later on, Marty introduced me to a few second-tier made men. I never exchanged much with them, but at least they started greeting me, which was a start. Then came a point where I began showing Marty some of my supposedly stolen jewelry. I told him I wanted to sell it, slowly revealing my intentions. We didn't strike a deal right away, but he still said,
"Anything you come across, Don, let me see it. If I could get rid of it, I will. I can move a lot of stuff, but come across a lot of swag."
As I said, my friend Chuck was investigating the music world at that time. We often helped each other out with our respective investigations. One day, he told me that he was organizing a concert with James Brown headlining. Chuck had already brought 2 guys connected to the Colombo family into the operation he was running, and he wanted to introduce me to them. So I went with him to the event, and that's how I met Albert. Albert was a connected guy with the Colombo family. His thing was scams. Chuck, Albert, and I would sometimes go out together and have a good time in trendy spots. Through that, I got to know Albert better. And that's when I decided to take him with me to Carmelo's. At the bar, Albert saw that I was accepted, which helped me gain his trust. I also gained more credibility with the regulars at the bar, as they now saw me hanging out with a connected guy of the Colombo family. From then on, my job was to get accepted, increase my credibility in the places I frequented, and hang out with Albert and the others. But Christmas was approaching, and it bothered me because I had little time to see my family. I was so busy with work that I ended up spending only Christmas morning with my wife and daughters. At the start of 1977, Albert and I went out to a party at a nightclub that was very popular with criminals. There, he introduced me to a guy he knew, Gilly Greca. Gilly Greca was also a connected guy from the Colombo family. He handled large amounts of stolen goods for the family and had a crew that mostly hung out in Brooklyn. So I met him, and he later invited me to visit him at his shop. I went to Brooklyn to see him, and I entered his shop. It was located in a rather quiet neighborhood. Inside, there were fancy clothes displayed at rock-bottom prices. In fact, it was stolen merchandise, and the shop was used to unload their loot. From there, I began hanging out with Gilly Greca's crew, which consisted mostly of thieves, burglars, and other assorted criminals. They trusted me because I was known by other people they knew. Gilly and his guys weren't made men. They were at the bottom of the Mafia hierarchy. But that didn't stop them from making good money. They were always preparing jobs to steal all kinds of things. Anything you wanted, they could steal. Nothing discouraged these guys, and they thought about nothing but that, from morning to night. They were never satisfied with what they had and always wanted more. One of Gilly's crew members was named Vinny. Vinny was a heavy-set guy with heart problems.
One afternoon, while we were playing cards in the back room, I listened to the guys talking about a burglary they were planning. The game ended, and suddenly, Vinny fell off his chair, put his hands on his chest, and seemed to be struggling to breathe. "Hey, you guys! Vinny's got a problem!" It looked like he was choking, but no one moved a finger. "He's having a heart attack! We gotta get him to the hospital! Come on, somebody help me with him!"
Oh, he does that all the time. He's just having one of his regular attacks. Let him pop a few pills, he'll get over it.
There was no way I was gonna let this guy die like that. I picked him up, took him to my car, and drove him to the emergency room. A few hours later, he came out.
"I ran out of my medication."
So we went back to Jilly's place, where the others were still playing cards. And that's when one of the guys said to me,
"See? We told you he'd be alright."
At times, the guys would suggest that I participate in their jobs with them, but I always found a way to back out. Packing a gun and all that stuff, that's too cowboy for me. I'll help you out later on with the unloading. There were a decent number of guys anyway, and the fewer they were when doing the burglaries, the more they made, so it worked out better for them in the end. But I still had to assert myself a bit and show them that I knew my trade as a burglar. When I agreed, I'd sit with them around a table and point out what was wrong. I mostly focused on the risks to make them abandon their plans. After all, I was an FBI agent. Otherwise, most of the time, I just unloaded the stolen goods. I stayed to myself and didn't ask questions. One day, I was with Jilly's right-hand man, Guido, a real tough guy, the hardest of the crew. Guido had already killed people, to give you an idea. So we were together in my car when he asked me,
"Hey Don, what's that squeak?"
"I don't know, doesn't bother me." He leaned in to take a closer look.
"Yeah, it's a squeak. It's in the dashboard. I'll take that dashboard off and find that squeak and fix it."
"Hey, Guido, don't waste your time. It don't bother me."
"It bothers me. It won't take long."
Guido then took out a tool and started dismantling the dashboard. In 5 minutes, it was done.
"It's okay."
"Well, what the hell did you take it apart for?"
"To tell you the truth, you're new around here. I just wanted to see if your car was wired up or anything. It's clean."
"Well, fuck you. You think I'm a fucking cop with a fucking recorder in my car? Why don't you just ask me, face to face?"
"Take it easy, Don. We gotta be careful, that's all. There's lots of operations they got going on around here. You're just new to us, that's all. Forget about it."
In reality, what had just happened didn't surprise me. I knew that sooner or later it would happen, which is why I never hid any microphones in my car. So I continued to hang out with Jilly's crew, kept a low profile, but then I thought I couldn't just keep standing by forever. I had to prove to them that I could pull off jobs too. To do this, I started buying some of their stolen goods, particularly from Vinny, one of the receivers in the crew. That way, I was establishing my credibility with them. I also sometimes sold them things like watches or jewelry. The guys thought it came from the jobs I was doing, but in reality, it was stuff that had been confiscated by the FBI. Of course, I always kept my main goal in mind, was to approach the big receivers the guys from Jilly's crew were working with. I actually tried asking them for these contacts once, but they told me,
"Give it to us. We'll bring it to the guy. Don't worry about it."
Jilly's dream was to be inducted into the Mafia, and one day in May of '77, his dream came true. He'd become a made guy, a full-fledged member of the Colombo family. Back then, being a made guy for an Italian gangster was the pinnacle. You changed your status within the mob and were more respected and protected. To become a wise guy, you obviously had to be Italian, but your entry into the Mafia also had to be unanimously voted on by the bosses and captains. Once inducted, no other member of the Cosa Nostra could then encroach on your territory. The Mafia protected you, your business, and in return, it demanded absolute loyalty from you. On the day of his initiation, I remember Jilly telling us,
Getting made is the greatest thing that could ever happen to me. I've been looking forward to this day ever since I was a kid. Maybe someday you'll know how it feels. This is the fucking ultimate.
Jilly was now a soldier in the Colombo family and part of the Charlie Moose Panerella's army, a captain of the same family. Sometime later, Frankie and Patsy, 2 members from Jilly's crew, got out of prison. They were tough guys specialized in daylight burglaries. They had been incarcerated before I joined the crew, and when they came back, let's just say they weren't too happy about my presence. One fine day, I walked into the shop, but unlike usual, no one greeted me. Jilly then took me by the arm and said to me, "Don, let's take a walk." We went for a walk, and then he said, "Look, Don, nothing for nothing, but Patsy and Frankie, they don't feel comfortable around you. They got a beef." "What's the problem?" "They feel like they don't know you well enough. They don't want you involved in any more jobs until they know more about you. They want the name of somebody that can vouch for you down in Miami, where you said you did a lot of work, so they can feel more comfortable with you." "Fuck them, Jilly. I'm not giving them the name of anybody." "Let's just take it easy, okay, Don? Let's go in and talk it over. Try to work it out." In addition to being the boss, Jilly was the crew's wise guy. It was therefore his responsibility to resolve this issue. Jilly had known these guys longer than I had, but I knew he trusted me. We sat down around a table to talk about it. Patsy and Frankie were there. The purpose of the meeting was for everyone to clear the air. "You got a beef?" Then Patsy responded, "You say you pulled off all those scores down in Miami before you came here, but we don't know nothing about that. And you seem to want to say a lot around here. So Frankie and me want to know somebody you did those jobs with, so we could check you out." "You don't need to check me out. I don't have to satisfy you just because you were in the can." "You could be anybody or anything. Maybe you're a stoolie. So we want to check you out." "I'm not giving you any name." At that point, Patsy pulled out a .32 caliber automatic pistol and placed it on the table. "You don't leave here until you give me a name. You don't give me a name? The only way you leave here is rolled up in a rug." The situation was getting really tense. "Don, it's no big deal. Just let him contact somebody, and everybody feels better and we forget about it." Finally, I agreed. In reality, I knew exactly which name to give them to get out of this mess. Before starting this infiltration mission, the FBI guys and I had prepared for situations like this, and we had agreed that if it ever came to it, I would give them the name of a federal informant in Miami. The informant in question was a burglar, and if anyone ever asked him about me, he was supposed to say that Brasco and he had done several jobs together, and that, overall, I was a stand-up guy. I had a cover, but I was still worried, because on one hand, I didn't know if the informant had received the message, and on the other, this was 7 months ago. So, Patsy went into the next room to contact this informant. I sat there waiting for him, and I watched the others play cards as if nothing were wrong. If the informant didn't play his part, it was clear I'd be a dead man. I waited for several hours for Patsy to return. It wasn't until 4:30 p.m. that he came back to join us. "Okay, we got an answer, and your guy okayed you." Yeah, that was a close call. Now, it's time for me to tell you about my infiltration with the Bonanno family. Chapter 3: Infiltrating the Bonannos. My infiltration into the Bonanno family began while I was still hanging out with Jilly's crew. During one of our outings at a nightclub, I was introduced to a guy who was part of this family, Anthony Mira. It was 1977, and at the time, Mira had just been released from prison, where he had spent nearly 18 years for drug trafficking. He was a soldier of the Bonanno family, known for his skills as a hitman. He had around 25 murders to his name, and many feared him, even within the Mafia. Mira had an unstable temperament. He was both hot-tempered and unpredictable. But he also knew a lot of people, and that's why I decided I needed to get close to him. I began spending more and more time with Mira, although I still hung out with Jilly's crew. I remember one day he invited me to visit him in the Little Italy neighborhood in Manhattan. Mira had a small snack bar there where we would meet regularly. It was then that he introduced me to another soldier in the family, a guy with a reputation as a hitman like him, Benjamin Lefty Guns Ruggiero. Lefty Ruggiero was in his 50s and owned a club near Mira's snack bar. I got to know him, and we began seeing each other regularly. So, my time was now split between Jilly's crew in Brooklyn and the Bonanno family guys in Little Italy. By the middle of the summer of 1977, we had gathered enough evidence on the burglaries and thefts committed by Jilly's crew to indict them at any time. However, the mission wasn't progressing the way I wanted. I had strengthened my connections with Mira, Lefty, and the other Bonanno affiliates, but I still hadn't made contact with the big-time fences in Brooklyn. So, after discussing it with my contacts at the FBI, we wondered whether it might be better to drop this lead and focus on the American Mafia guys. After some thought, we decided it was worth pursuing. I started spending more time in the Little Italy neighborhood, to the point that by August 1977, I was spending all my time there. At that time, 5 mafia families shared control in New York. These were the Bonanno family, into which I was now infiltrated. Officially, it was Rusty Rastelli who led them during my mission, but he was in prison, so the role of boss was given to Carmen Galante. The Gambino family, led by Big Paul Castellano. The Genovese family, commanded by Philip Lombardo. The Lucchese family, headed by Anthony Corallo. Finally, the Colombo family, officially led by Tommy DeBella and unofficially by Carmen Persico, known as the Snake. In the Mafia, each level of the command chain required total obedience from its subordinates. The hierarchy was structured as follows: the boss at the top, followed by the underboss, second in command, usually the one who takes the boss's place if he's imprisoned. Then there's the consigliere, the advisor to the big boss, the captains, and at the bottom, the soldiers. Not to mention all the connected guys to these made men. The rules that govern this hierarchy were known to be very strict. If by misfortune you failed to comply with them, you'd be eliminated, plain and simple. I had to be very careful, blending in as much as possible with their mold. In the Bonanno family, I was starting to gain more and more trust, especially from Mira, with whom I was spending more time. It wasn't always easy with them. He had a terrible personality, but I didn't give up until he introduced me to some of his contacts. When he wasn't around, I would hang out with Lefty at his club in Little Italy. Most of the time, Lefty and I would talk about sports and betting, which eventually established a relationship between us. Lefty started calling me Donnie, a nickname that was later adopted by everyone else. Lefty handled betting operations for Nicky Marangelo, the number 2 man in the Bonanno family at the time. He wanted me to help him take bets, and that's when I also began working for Lefty. Like Mira, Lefty had a solid reputation as a hitman and held the rank of soldier in the hierarchy. One was under the command of Mickey Zaffarano, and the other under the tutelage of Mike Sabella. But aside from that, the two were very different from each other. Lefty was more of a nervous type and talked a lot. He was a gambling addict who bet heavily every day, but he wasn't as unpleasant as Mira. By the way, once I was hanging out with Mira, I discovered something about the Mafia. I had to take him to Nicky Marangelo's office, and he told me there about a secret group of individuals I had no idea existed. The Zips. The Zips, according to him, were Sicilians brought to the United States to distribute heroin and carry out contracts on behalf of Carmen Galante, the boss of the Bonanno family. They didn't have papers and were completely unknown to the police. They usually met in pizzerias to traffic heroin, launder money, or simply wait for orders from Galante. The Zips were apparently known for being the most brutal killers in the Mafia. Unlike the made men, they didn't hesitate to kill judges or police officers. I gathered all the useful information about them to pass it on to the FBI. Then came the moment when I had to make a choice between Mira and Lefty. I hadn't said it until now, but the two hated each other. The reason was that they saw me as a source of money, which created jealousy between the two of them. This put me in a difficult situation, and I knew that sooner or later, I would have to make a choice. But in the end, I didn't have to. One afternoon, I arrived at Lefty's club and saw him on the phone. Lefty was talking to Jilly, and when he hung up, he said,
Jilly says you ain't no leech. He says you keep busy and earn good, and nobody over there had to carry you.
So?
So I'm happy to hear it.
A few days later, while I was with them, he announced,
Donnie, I put a claim on you. I went on record with Mike and Nicky. You're my partner now.
Hey, Lefty, that's great.
Now, Donnie, this means you have to start really listening to me, going by the rules. I'm responsible for you. You're responsible to me. I hope everything you say about yourself is true, because if you fuck up, we're both gonna go bye-bye.
I had now become a connected guy with the Bonanno family. Lefty didn't waste any time starting what he called my schooling. It was very demanding, and began by telling me to shave off my mustache.
No real wise guys wear mustaches, except some of the old mustache Petes. You gotta look neat, dress right.
He then explained some of the Mafia rules to me.
Respect. That's the most important thing. The worst thing you can do is embarrass a wise guy. If you embarrass a captain or a boss, forget about it. You're history. When you're not a wise guy, the wise guy is always right and you're always wrong. It don't matter what. Don't forget that, Donnie. Because no other wise guy is gonna side with you against another wise guy. Now, when a wise guy introduces you to another wise guy, he will say, Donnie is a friend of mine. That means Donnie is okay, and you can talk in front of him if you want. But he's not a made guy, so you may not want to talk about certain business or family matters in front of him. That's the way I introduce you, see? When a wise guy is introducing another made guy, he will say, he's a friend of ours. That means you can talk business in front of him, because he's a member of La Cosa Nostra. If you keep your nose clean and don't fuck up, and obey the rules and be a good earner, maybe you'll get proposed for membership one day.
Lefty was now responsible for me, which meant I had to inform him before doing anything. If I wanted to leave the city, for example, I had to keep him informed and stay in contact with him at all times. And of course, I had to share all my profits with him. In short, from now on, I had to follow the rules of the business.
You ever do a hit on anybody, Donnie?
I never had a contract, if that's what you mean. I killed a couple guys. One guy in a fight, another guy that fucked me out of a score, and we got into a beef.
That ain't a hit.
If you kill somebody, you kill somebody. What's the difference?
No, Donnie, you don't understand. It ain't that simple. That's why I gotta school you. Hitting a guy on a contract is a lot different than whacking a guy over a beef. On a beef, you gotta rage about the guy. But on a contract, you might have no feelings one way or another about the guy. It might not even concern you why the guy's getting hit. You gotta be able to do it just like a professional job, with no emotion at all. You think you could do that?
I don't see why not.
If such a situation were to arise, I had to be prepared. As an FBI agent, I obviously couldn't allow murders to take place in front of me. But what to do? Should I intervene, risking being killed myself? After thinking it over, I decided that if the victim was a mafioso and I had to choose between his life or mine, I would let him be killed. But if it was an ordinary citizen, I'd take the risk of intervening. During the summer of 1977, I began to be genuinely accepted into the family. They trusted me, and I was meeting more and more made men from all the families. Among others, I met Al Walker, Tony Mira's uncle, Joey Messino, a Bonanno soldier who was quickly rising through the ranks, and Nicky Santora, also a Bonanno member. By the end of 1977, I'd been infiltrating the Mafia for a year and was feeling good. I'd established good relationships with Lefty and the Bonanno family, and I was well integrated. My reputation within the Mafia could then help the FBI, and especially its other agents infiltrated across the country, to gain additional credibility. After all, I was Lefty's friend in New York. It was then that I had to help an undercover agent in Milwaukee. The FBI was working on a case there, aiming to catch the boss of the local mafia. Chapter 4: Operations in Milwaukee and Miami. In Milwaukee, the FBI was working on an undercover operation to dismantle the local mafia. Since the results were delayed, they contacted me for help. I was to assist a colleague, also a friend who was already on the ground, an undercover agent going by the name of Tony Conti. The target was Frank Balistrieri, the boss of the local mafia. Balistrieri ran the Milwaukee family, which was affiliated with Chicago. He controlled the vending machine business in the city, and with the FBI, we wanted to prove the illegality of his activities. To do this, Tony Conti needed to set up his own vending machine business and install machines in stores, bars, or clubs in the area. If Balistrieri and his men tried to push him out of town using force, we could charge him with extortion. Before the FBI reached out to me, Conti had been trying for months to approach local business owners in Milwaukee to install his vending machines, but had no success. The power Balistrieri held over the city was far too great for him to make any headway. That's when they contacted me. They wanted me to leverage my New York contacts to convince one of my associates to get involved in Conti's vending machine business. In fact, they wanted the New York guys to partner with Balistrieri through Conti to help move the mission forward. Obviously, I immediately thought of Lefty for this. I filled him in by telling him that I had a friend looking to start a vending machine business in Milwaukee, and that we could make a lot of money. Money was all that interested Lefty, so it was easy to get him on board. After bringing him into the fold, we now had to convince the higher-ups in the Bonanno family, including Mike Sabella, Lefty's capo, and Carmen Galanti, the boss. Lefty took care of that, and sometime later, we had all the green lights. A meeting was set up between the Milwaukee Mafia and the Bonanno family, and everything went smoothly. An alliance between the two families was established. The result? We'd successfully infiltrated two mafia families, and we're now partnered with a boss. It couldn't have been better. With Conti, we now had enough evidence to indict Balistrieri and charge him with extortion. The Milwaukee boss had effectively made a secret deal with us, which stipulated that he would eliminate any potential unwanted competitors in his territory. Our mission now was to gather as much intelligence as possible on Balistrieri's other illegal activities, gambling, union rackets, among others. But strangely, Balistrieri suddenly stopped responding to our calls. He started avoiding Conti and became cold towards us. Apparently, he was caught up in a serious indictment issue. Let's just say that was the moment for us to pack up and wrap up the operation in Milwaukee. One day in July 1979, Lefty called me to tell me to buy the newspapers.
You'll be in for a big surprise.
I checked the press, and what did I see? Carmen Galanti, the head of the Bonanno family, had been shot. He was on the front page of every newspaper in New York, lying in a pool of blood with a cigar in his mouth. He'd been gunned down while having lunch at an Italian-American restaurant in Brooklyn. Upon hearing the news, I immediately called Lefty.
Wow!
There's gonna be big changes.
Well, where do we stand with everybody?
I can't talk over the phone. Come in right away.
I went to see him, and that's when he told me that Rusty Rastelli'd become the new boss of the family, and that we would no longer report to Mike Sabella, but to Sonny Black, the new captain. Mike Sabella and Nicky Marangelo had been demoted to mere soldiers. Dominic Napolitano, known as Sonny Black, was part of the Brooklyn branch of the Bonanno family. I didn't know him yet, as when I started my mission, he was already in prison for armed robbery. The hierarchy in the Bonanno family had changed, but I still continued with the mission. With Lefty, we spent a lot of time in Miami and the surrounding areas for vacations. We bet our money at the racetracks, the Greyhound races, or simply looked for ways to make money. Like Las Vegas, Miami was open territory for all the mafioso. Any family could operate there as long as it didn't encroach on another family's territory. So, we had a good time there with Lefty, and then one day, the FBI told me they wanted to set up an operation in Florida. A mission to help get an undercover agent whose code name was Tony Rossi. Rossi was infiltrating the Florida gambling scene to make contact with the family of Santo Trafficante Jr. Trafficante was a big player, the largest mafia boss in Florida. He'd run casinos in Havana before Castro came to power, and was also known for having been involved in a CIA plot to assassinate the Cuban statesman. Rossi managed to make inroads into the Trafficante family, where he held a position that involved protecting illegal card games. But things weren't moving quickly enough. Weeks passed and the gold's still not been achieved. So the FBI came up with the idea of opening a nightclub in Florida to get closer to Trafficante. They found the perfect location and rented a place in the northeast part of Tampa, which they named the King's Court. Rossi was made the owner of the establishment, and the club was fully renovated. They started organizing gambling parties to attract local crooks, but nothing was coming of it. That's when they reached out to me, asking if I could get the Bonanno family involved, so they could partner with Trafficante in Florida. A deal that would be beneficial for both the Bonannos and us. Of course, I agreed. All that was left was to prepare the ground. But then, a twist. The FBI suddenly told me I had to end my infiltration mission. They'd just discovered what had scared Frank Balistrieri during our operation in Milwaukee. Balistrieri had learned that Tony Conti was an undercover FBI agent. That was the reason he'd stopped responding to us. That was one thing, but there was something more serious. According to Mafia laws, Balistrieri now had to inform the Bonanno family about this. And if that happened, I'd be a dead man. The situation was tense, but I still tried to convince the Bureau to let me continue the mission. After long negotiations, I was allowed to proceed. It was good news, but I wasn't very at ease. At any moment, Balistrieri could inform the Bonanno family about Conti, which would end the mission and my life. Between the fall of 1979 and February 1980, I gradually brought up the King's Court to Lefty. My goal was to have the Bonanno family do business with the Trafficante family, specifically through Rossi's nightclub, so we could gather as much evidence as possible. In March, Lefty visited the King's Court for the first time. Rossi and I went to pick him up at the airport, and then we all went to a Greek restaurant together. Rossi spoke to him about his Florida business and pretended to be looking for partners to invest in his club. What Rossi and I wanted was to show Lefty that this was a lucrative deal and that the club could bring in a lot of money. We knew that if Lefty bit, we could also involve Sonny Black in the scheme and ultimately have a better chance of implicating Santo Trafficante. A week later, the deal was done. Lefty had brought Sonny Black up to speed, and the Bonanno family had invested in Rossi's club, as planned. To gather the evidence we needed, we rigged the King's Court with surveillance equipment, hidden video cameras, microphones, and tape recorders. Sonny Black, for his part, was pleased with the way things were going at the King's Court. He'd occasionally come down to the south to push the deal forward. And then, one day, he started insisting on making contact with Trafficante. Exactly what we wanted. Lefty was the one who had to arrange the meeting. He went through intermediaries, and the meeting was scheduled. Sonny Black now had to wait for a call from Trafficante to find out where and when it would take place. Once the call came in, the location and time were set. Trafficante and the Bonanno family would meet at a Greek restaurant at 8 p.m. On our side, we were ready, with the FBI having specifically sent a surveillance team to the location. The meeting between the two mafia families took place, and when it was over, Sonny told me that everything had gone perfectly. They had some sort of introductory conversation where they discussed setting up a bingo operation, which would actually start the day after the meeting. It was Benny Husick, Trafficante's right-hand man, who had gone to see Sonny Black that day to find a location and get the operation underway. Our plan had gone as expected. The marriage between the Bonanno family and the Trafficante family had finally taken place. But then, there was an escalation of tensions within the Bonanno family. Chapter 5. Things start to heat up. One evening, I was dining at a restaurant in Brooklyn with Sonny Black and one of his lieutenants, John Booby Sarasani. Sonny wanted to congratulate me for the work I was doing in Florida with my friend Rossi.
I'm pleased with how you're conducting yourself down there. What you're doing, the book, the Shylocking, you're independent, don't have to be told what to do. You're not always coming and asking me for money like a lot of the guys. Thanks, bro. The books are gonna open up for membership at the end of the year. I could propose 5 guys, which I got already. Booby's number 1. Then I'm obligated with 4 other guys that are relatives of family members. But the next time the books open up, maybe next year, you're gonna be the first guy that I propose. Hey, Sonny, I really appreciate that. I'm honored.
And it was true, because no FBI agent had ever managed to become a made guy. If I succeeded, my infiltration mission would take on a whole new dimension. However, things quickly took a dark turn. During several conversations, I overheard that tensions were escalating within the Bonanno family. Apparently, there were 2 factions within the family. One faction, which I was a part of, included the big boss Rusty Rastelli, Steve Cannoni, and the captains Sonny Black and Joe Messino. The other faction, which included captains Cesare Bonventre, Philip Philly Lucky Ciccone, Dominic Big Trin Trinchera, Alphonse Indelicato, nicknamed Sonny Red, and his son, Anthony Bruno Indelicato. The conflict went back to the time of Galanti's murder when the 2 factions had fought over who would take control of the family. This dispute was on the brink of sparking a war, but fortunately they hadn't gone that far. Diplomacy had prevailed over bloodshed, and a meeting had been scheduled to find a compromise. The first meeting was planned but never took place. They then arranged a second one, and that's when things took a dramatic turn. It was May 5th, 1981. Alphonse Sonny Red Indelicato, Philly Lucky Ciccone, and Dominic Big Trin Trinchera went to a restaurant in Brooklyn to ease the tensions between their faction and Rusty Rastelli and Sonny Black's faction. Once there, they were taken to the back room of the establishment, when suddenly, men hidden in closets emerged and gunned them down with rifles and pistols. Sonny Black, John Booby Sarasani, Joe Messino, and 6 other Bonanno men were said to have been involved in the killings. Afterward, the bodies were buried in a vacant lot, and the core members of the opposition to Rusty Rastelli and Sonny Black were wiped out. However, one person was still on the list, and it wasn't Cesare Bonventre, as he was serving time for illegal possession of a firearm at that moment. No, it was Sonny Red's son, Bruno Indelicato. One day, I receive a summons from Sonny Black. Apparently, he wanted to discuss an important matter with me. This was just a few days after the murder incident, so it could very well have been a setup to eliminate me. The FBI guys were worried, and I thought I was about to be killed. I was worried too, but I was almost certain it wasn't a trap. I went to the bar where the meeting was supposed to take place, and I saw Sonny, calm and waiting for me. The atmosphere seemed fairly relaxed.
How you doing? How's Florida?
We moved to the back room and sat at a game table.
You know we took care of those 3 guys. They're finished. You got any reliable people in Miami? Yeah, why? Because one guy got away. You know Anthony Bruno?
Sonny Black was talking about Sonny Red's son, Bruno Indelicato, the one who wasn't present during the murder.
I may have seen him, I don't know. I think he went to Miami because he's got a 3,000 a day coke habit and he's got connections with the Colombians down there. I want you to find him. When you find him, hit him. Be careful, because when he's coked up, he's crazy. He's not a tough guy with his hands, but if he has a gun, you know.
The time had come for me to prove myself. Sonny Black had given me this job so that I could build my resume when he would propose my candidacy to become a made guy. But as an FBI agent, I had a problem. I couldn't participate in a murder. My duty was to prevent it, if possible. On the other hand, as a connected guy, I couldn't refuse this offer without jeopardizing my credibility. Technically, since I wasn't yet made, I could refuse the job and no one would hold it against me. But I didn't want to undermine all the credibility I had built since 1976. And anyway, with or without me, this guy was going to be killed. Time passed and I was preparing to honor the contract. Except that a twist of fate occurred. The FBI decided it was time to wrap up the mission. Sonny Red's body had been discovered by the police, which had caused a resurgence of tensions within the Mafia. War had been openly declared, and the FBI expected more murders to follow. Being close to Sonny Black and having a target to take down, I was now a prime target. That's why the FBI wanted to end the mission. But stopping it suddenly was extremely frustrating for me, because I was about to become made, which would have allowed me to humiliate the Mafia and end its myth of invincibility. I would have become Sonny's right-hand man, who would have used me as an intermediary to make connections with other families. But at the office, everyone agreed that I was putting my life in serious danger. It was really hard to consider ending this operation after 5 years, but I had to comply with my superior's decision. The mission was scheduled to end on July 26, 1981. Only a few weeks left until my role as Donnie Brasco was over, and then I had this conversation with Sonny Black.
Donnie, I'm gonna put you up for membership when the old man gets out.
By old man, Sonny was referring to Rusty Rastelli, who was in prison at that time.
I love you like a brother. I can't trust anybody else in this crew. I know they're telling stories. You and I got faith in. I want to make sure that if I get whacked or anything, my kids and my wife get what's coming to them from my partners. You understand? I gotta trust you to take care of my kids. You could trust me, bro.
Then came the D-Day. Three federal agents were supposed to visit Sonny Black to announce the news. They went to one of his establishments and showed him a photo where I was seen with those same 3 agents. "Do you know this guy? He's an FBI agent. We just wanted to tell you." Without showing any emotion, Sonny replied, "I don't know him, but if I meet him, I'll know he's an FBI agent." Upon hearing the news, Sonny's first reaction was to gather his men. Lefty, Booby, and Nicky Santora showed up. Sonny explained to them that it was impossible for me to be an FBI agent, and if I were, it was because they'd either kidnap me or perhaps even brainwash me. At first, Sonny and his guys refused to make the news public, and for over a week, they searched for me everywhere in the country without any results. Which made sense because I'd moved with my family to the West Coast, California. We were all living under an alias, and our house had been equipped by the FBI with a special alarm system. My real name was now splashed in large letters in the press, and the Donnie Brasco mission was exposed to the world. I remember my daughters crying when they learned the news. My grandfather, on the other hand, was afraid to go out and start his car. After 10 days of fruitless searching, Sonny Black decided it was time to inform his peers. He first called Santo Trafficante, then sent the news to Rusty Rastelli, and later informed Paul Castellano, the head of the Gambino family, the big boss. As a result, the Cosa Nostra bosses had several meetings in New York to assess the damage. Photos of me were distributed across the country to find me. There was a $500,000 contract on my head. Fortunately, to deter them, FBI agents visited all the Mafia bosses and told them each, "Hands off this agent. He beat you. It's finished." And if they went after me, all the power of the US justice system would descend upon them. On August 14, 1981, 17 days after my identity was revealed by the FBI, the Mafia bosses held another meeting, and Sonny Black was invited. He went to it knowing full well he'd probably not come out alive. After the meeting, indeed, no one saw him again. He'd probably paid the ultimate price for trusting me and introducing me into the family. Lefty, however, was the only one we learned had a contract on his head. He was the only one we protected from the Mafia's death threats. A month later, I met Sonny's girlfriend in the restaurant of a hotel. The area had been carefully cordoned off and closely monitored by several federal agents. Sonny's girlfriend didn't know where he was, and naturally she was very worried about him. During our conversation, she said to me,
"You know what he said? He told me he really loved that kid. He was really broken up when he found out you were an agent, but he said that wouldn't change the way he felt because of the type of guy you were. You did your job, and you did it right."
Good evening, I'm Roger Grimsby. Here now the news. An undercover FBI agent who joined the underworld spent his second day in the witness chair. Testimony was given at the trial of 5 men accused of racketeering and other violations. Milton Lewis reports the lawman was working his way up the crime ladder.
On August 2nd, 1982, I began to testify. It was a historical trial, the first in which a group of made men were indicted. That day, the courtroom was packed. I could see rows of journalists, as well as the 5 defendants, including Lefty Ruggiero, Booby Sarasani, Nicky Santora, and 2 other mafiosi. Perched in the witness stand, I could see them in disbelief. Apparently, Lefty refused to believe I was a federal agent. He'd said to his lawyer,
"He'll never testify against us."
However, he eventually changed his mind when he spent time in his cell between court appearances. On my side, I'd worked tirelessly with the prosecutors to indict as many mafia members as possible. We'd prepared trials for racketeering, illegal gambling, extortion, and murders in New York State, Milwaukee, Tampa, and Kansas City. The information I'd gathered over all these years of infiltration was crucial for American justice. I testified for months. We managed to secure over 100 convictions. Ultimately, those 6 years within the Mafia didn't change me. I remained the same, and I had no trouble abandoning my role as Donnie Brasco. Throughout all those years, I never actually lost my bearings. Would I do it again if I had to do it over? Professionally, I'd say yes, without a doubt. Personally, however, it's different. 10 years of my family life went up in smoke. I wasn't sure if the game was worth the candle. One day after a trial in New York State, the defense lawyer came to see me to congratulate me. I remember he said to me, "You did a hell of a job. You got some set of balls, Agent Pistone." After 17 years of loyal service, Joseph Pistone resigned from the FBI in 1986. Unlike Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero, he did not benefit from the Federal Witness Protection Program. At the end of this large-scale infiltration operation, Agent Pistone received a bonus of $500. Following his mission, the Cosa Nostra excluded the Bonanno family from the commission and changed some of its admission rules. Notably, it reinstated an old rule requiring every applicant to prove themselves. In other words, to kill someone before becoming a made guy. It also introduced a new rule stipulating that every made guy must be able to affirm they've known the applicant since childhood. Despite resigning from the FBI in 1986, Agent Pistone continued to testify. Some trials resulting from his investigations became famous, such as the Pizza Connection case, one of the largest international heroin trafficking networks ever dismantled, thanks largely to the information Pistone gathered about the Zips. And the Commission case, the trial that exposed New York's 5 families. Today, Joseph Pistone is 85 years old and continues to live anonymously with his wife and 3 daughters. The $500,000 contract on his head is apparently still active.
Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Play it now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile using the links in the description or pinned comment. And don't miss your massive bonus pack if you're new or returning after 6 months on PC or console. It's only available for a limited time.
Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero, convicted in Milwaukee, Tampa, and New York, sentenced to 20 years in prison. He was released in April 1993 due to lung and testicular cancer. He died 1 year later. Dominic Sonny Black Napolitano, assassinated in New York in August 1981. His body was not found until the following year at the bottom of a creek. The victim, shot 23 times and with both hands cut off, a clear mafia message, had violated presentation rules within organized crime. Anthony Mira, hid following the murder of Sonny Black and the FBI's revelation of Operation Donnie Brasco, fearing he would be the next on the list. He was assassinated in New York in 1982. Mira was so hated in the Mafia that some believed he was an informant working for Brasco. Jilly Greca, assassinated in Brooklyn in 1980. Paul Castellano, indicted in the Commission case, assassinated in New York in 1985. Anthony Corallo, convicted in the Commission case in New York, sentenced to 100 years in prison. Carmen Persico, convicted in the Commission case in New York, sentenced to 100 years in prison. Philip Rusty Rostelli, convicted in New York, sentenced to 12 years in prison. Nicky Santora, convicted in New York, sentenced to 20 years in prison. John Booby Sarasani, acquitted in New York, pled guilty in Tampa, sentenced to 5 years in prison. Mike Sabella, acquitted in Milwaukee. Nicky Marangelo, convicted in New York, sentenced to 10 years in prison. Steve Canoni, died in 1985. Al Walker, no charges filed in cases resulting from Agent Pistone's work. Joseph Messino, convicted in New York, sentenced to 10 years in prison. Anthony Bruno and Delicato, indicted in the commission case in New York, sentenced to 40 years in prison. Cesare Bonventre, assassinated in 1984. Frank Balistrieri, convicted to 13 years in prison in Milwaukee and 10 years in Kansas City. John and Joseph Balistrieri, sons of Frank Balistrieri, convicted to 8 years in prison in Milwaukee. Benny Husick pled guilty in Tampa, sentenced to 3 years in prison. Santo Trafficante, indicted in Florida, died in 1987.
Let me tell you something now. Point blank. You be in by Wednesday?
Yeah. Wednesday or Thursday, I told you that.
You're coming in, but no, he don't know that.
I didn't say anything to him.
But you're coming in to meet me uptown.
Yeah, Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah.
All right, because would you like to come back with us Friday night? If I can arrange it?
Yeah, you going all the way down south?
I'm going with Luis.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm going to Florida.
Yeah.
So?
Yeah, well, if we're going to be up there Wednesday, I might as well stay and come.
I don't want the guy to know you're in town.
Go out and stay,
We'll meet by the airport.
Yeah, no big deal.
All right, let me see if I can arrange all these things.
All right.
You call me tomorrow morning.
Yeah, all right.
Bye-bye.
We've reached the end of the video. Thank you very much for your time. Feel free to like the video and share it if you enjoyed it. It's the best way to reward my work. I also see that we've surpassed 80,000 subscribers, which is incredible. Thank you so much for your support, and welcome to all the new arrivals. Something new is coming soon, so feel free to follow my work. Until then, take care.
He infiltrated the Mafia for 6 years and was never found out. But now there's a $500,000 contract on his life. He told his story in a nationwide bestseller called Donnie Brasco, My Undercover Life in the Mafia. This is now out on paperback. I don't have a copy, but if you go to a store, I'm guaranteeing you they'll have it. Please welcome Joe Pistone. Aren't you afraid to even do television shows?
Well, not really, Arsenio. I got precautions that I put in place. I travel with bodyguards, and, I was an FBI agent. I was a good guy. And so much of my life has been dictated from this contract on my life that, I got to put a stop somewhere, and I got to make a living because I'm no longer an agent.
Are you afraid?
Well, it's not a matter of being afraid. You can walk across the street and get hit by a car. It's a matter of getting used to living this type of life and just maintaining the precautions that I've put in place, and it's natural now for me.
Why didn't you choose to do something else? Why go undercover into the Mafia?
Well, because I was an FBI agent. I had been involved in undercover work prior to this particular assignment. And at the time, I was the best suited agent to undertake this assignment because of my previous experience and my background and my knowledge of the Mafia, that I was a logical choice. And when I was asked to do it, I accepted.
Does the FBI help protect you now that they've gotten you in this jam?
Well, I don't get daily, 24-hour protection from the government, except when I'm testifying. The protection I have are retired agents or police officers that are friends of mine.
How has the Mafia changed since you did this? Did you have any effect on it?
Yes, what we've done is, from our investigation, we were able to convict over 100 high-ranking members of the Mafia. In New York, we put in jail all the bosses of the Mafia Commission. What it has done is changed the leadership, and which has hurt it to some extent.
Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard as a result of what you did, to keep this from ever happening again, the Mafia requires that you kill someone when you first get involved.
Well, that was a requirement. I had been given several contracts to kill other Mafia individuals. At the time that I was in, I got the contract, and it wasn't required that another Mafia member be present at these hits. What they've done now is what a person that is in an apprenticeship, so to speak, to become a made guy, gets a contract. He has to have a made guy with him when he goes out and kills a person.
Being involved in the Mafia, I'm sure it requires killing people a lot. Have you ever been in a position where you were told to kill someone?
Yes, I was given a contract on 2 different occasions. One occasion to kill 2 individuals that were hiding out together. And on another occasion, I had to meet some other mob guys in Fort Lauderdale. We were going to whack out a guy, but they called it off at the last minute because they wanted to kill 3 guys together. It's not funny.
So you never actually had to kill anybody?
Well, no, because what I did was I went out looking for these guys. I went from New York to Miami, but obviously I wasn't looking because as an FBI agent, I couldn't kill anybody.
But did you ever think of what you would do if you were put in the position of having to kill someone and that's your job? I mean,
yes, I gave it a lot of thought. And in the Mafia, when you're given a contract, you have to carry it out. You can't say, no, well, I don't feel like carrying it out. So I could not refuse a contract when it was given to me. Or if, say, on the spur of the moment, we were in the club and then, decided, let's go hit somebody. Well, I had my mindset, if it was going to be another Mafia guy, it was going to be him and not me. If it was an ordinary citizen, then I'd put my life on the line for the ordinary citizen.
That's interesting. We obviously here in Hollywood have a certain kind of viewpoint of what the Mafia is like with movies like Prince of the City. Is the life that glamorous? Is it anything like what we see in the movies?
No, it's not. What you see in the movies, the true part is that there's a lot of killing going on, a lot of fear, intimidation, all the robbing and the stealing. But the romanticism is not the actual Mafia. They are not guys that go out every day in, $2,000 suits and hang around, spacious offices. They're basically street thugs that, hang around smoky social clubs or bars, and they'll steal anything. Today we might steal $5, tomorrow steal $5 million. How much you steal has no bearing on it, as long as you're getting over and stealing something. That's the main point.
Do you regret that you ever did this? I mean, your life must be a living hell now, man.
Well, I regret it in that the way it's changed my family's life, in that my children had to change schools. We've had to move 3 times. They have complete different backgrounds, different names. That's the thing I regret, what I had to put, what they've gone through since the operation has surfaced and I've been in court.
It's rough. I hope things work out because I realized that what you did initially was to try to make things better, Good luck. The book is called Donnie Brasco, True Story of an FBI Agent, My Undercover Life in the Mafia. We'll be back with the whinings after this important message.